that, but clearly that's not an option right now. You didn't ask this, but I'm going to take the opportunity anyway. That, you know, as we talk about security assistance, and we're doing a lot, and we're doing a lot faster. And I understand the focus and the interest in the actual items being sent and being used. I totally get that, but I just hope we don't forget that it's not just the stuff that matters. It's their ability to use this stuff, and that didn't happen by accident. 8 years of training of Ukrainian armed forces has made an enormous difference in their battlefield competency, in their capability. And that wasn't just the United States. UK, the Canadians, and other allies were also involved in that. So that when these things are arriving, they're able to get into the hands of Ukrainian armed forces, and they're able to use them in fairly short order. Again, that's not an accident. That prowess, that agility that we were talking about earlier, that very much was by design because of 8 years of very quality training that they've received.
Those statements that you just made there is probably what fuels the idea that there's some training going on, only because some of these weapons and supplies are relatively new to the Ukrainians. And your testimony up there, as you were saying, 8 years of training by the United States and other countries gives them this prowess, gives them the ability to stun the Russians. Yet on newer weapons they may not be so familiar with. How could they achieve that same? I'm just saying that suggests the fact that somewhere along the line.
I can't improve upon my answer. There's no training right now in the classic sense.
Okay. Fine. Thank you, John. With everything that you mentioned about the Russian troops movement around Kiev, did the department detect any de-escalation on the side of the Russian troops and around Kiev, but in Ukraine in general? And then, if I may,
wait, before you go on, what do you mean by de-escalation?
What they said, there's going to be some de-escalation and the operations and
what they call de-escalation, I call repositioning. That they had already been in a defensive posture before they began to reposition. As far as we can tell, the forces that remain around Kyiv are still largely in defensive positions.
But in terms of military operations, targeting the city itself?
Well, clearly they are from the air. I mean, the Kyiv is still a central focus of their airstrikes.
And you credited the Ukrainian forces with their agility and stopping not only that convoy, but basically it seems like they were able to thwart this Russian offensive to take Kyiv. Should the Pentagon as well be credited with any advisory role on the operational level with the Ukrainians throughout this war? You said like for 8 years, of course the U.S. played a role in training these forces. Did the Pentagon play any role, not only in supplying the weapons, but play any advisory role in the operational sense of how to basically deal with this?
We don't have trainers on the ground in Ukraine. We're not doing tactical level, advise and assist, which is what I think you're getting at. But we have said for a while now, to the degree we can provide the Ukrainians information that's useful to them in the fight, we're providing that. I think that's about the best I can answer your question. Barb.
A question from one of our colleagues who was unable to dial in would like to ask.
So they found a workaround.
It's a very typical practice. The White House often did that during COVID. People would email to other colleagues. So this person, who shall go unnamed, would like to know the Russian announcement, and then I have a question, about the 134,000 conscripts. What do you make of that? Do you believe the Russians, when they say these conscripts won't go into Ukraine, it's a routine call-up? Do you believe they're going to get mobilized and that the Russians are going to have to rely on them in the coming weeks? And the question I wanted to ask you, can you bring us up to date on any plan or thoughts you have, the department has, about the need to establish either a rotational or extension program for the troops you've sent? While some of them are quite recently there, there's every reason to think you're going to have to eventually rotate or extend some units. Thank you.
On the conscripts, I mean, we've seen noted that the Ministry of Defense has claimed that these conscripts that President Putin has now called up, 134,000 or so, they've claimed that they're not going to be sent into Ukraine to fight. We'll see. We've also seen Russia reject the deployment of conscripts in Ukraine totally outright, saying, it wasn't happening, only to then have to publicly acknowledge that after it was revealed by journalists that they were in fact there. So I don't think you can take anything from the Ministry of Defense at face value. So we'll see. We know that, and we've talked about this before, Barb, that in those early days, it was a significant amount of their forces were conscripts. And we have indications that many of them were simply lied to about what they were doing. Some of them thought they were going on a training exercise. Weren't told that they were actually going into combat, into war. And of course, that sense of disillusionment and their lack of proper training and preparation led to some disastrous consequences for some of these early Russian units. So again, we'll see. We'll see where this goes. We'll watch. We'll try to do the best we can to verify. We're not going to take it face value. And on the extensions or rotations, I think the Secretary wants to keep his options open, Barb. The additional deployments that we've sent now, somewhere on the order of just under 20,000 or so troops to Europe. These are on temporary orders. We'll take each one as it comes, and the Secretary will decide whether that capability needs to stay, yes or no, and then if it does it need to be that unit, or do we need to rotate that unit out? Thus far, nobody has been rotated out. Everybody that the Secretary has ordered in is going to stay in. And we've talked about the 82nd Airborne, for instance, and some of their enablers. They are still there, and the Secretary's made no decisions about their departure. The Carrier Strike Group, Harry S. Truman, is still in the Mediterranean and will stay in the Mediterranean until the Secretary decides that it's time for the ship to rotate out. Now, with a Carrier Strike Group, obviously you've got refit and refuel and maintenance that has to go on the back end of a deployment. So we'll factor that all in there. But I think what we're trying to be careful of is sort of our hard ending dates on these temporary deployments, because we want to be able to monitor the situation on the ground and make the best and most flexible decisions in real time.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't get it. Because, are you just saying you're going to, I know you're not exactly saying you're just going to bust deployment regularly.
No. We're going to,
Are you open to rotations?
Of course, absolutely. The Secretary is leaving his options open. And look, Barb, nobody knows how long the need's going to be there, the acute need for these deterrence and defense capabilities, because we don't know how long this war in Ukraine is going to last. So I think it follows just normal reason that at some point, if the length of time gets to a point where commanders on the ground recommend that they swap these units out, the Secretary will certainly be open to that. And it may be like you remove a capability because it's not only time to send that capability back, but maybe you just don't need it as much anymore. And maybe what goes forward is something completely different, or maybe nothing at all. I think it's going to be very flexible, and we'll be as open with you as we can about what's going in. But you've noticed, I'm sure, that we're not giving you hard end dates because we're watching this in real time. It is about making sure that we are properly postured on the eastern flank of the alliance. And again, that's a put and take that the Secretary's looking at literally every day.
Can you say, besides the Carrier Strike Group you just mentioned, can you say who else is, and I believe Army Combat Brigade, can you say what other units are being extended?
I don't have any other ones to speak to at this time. Those are the big muscle movements that we know are staying in place for right now. But as you know, Barb, we have lots of small units, enablers, and I don't have visibility on all of those.
Is the 82nd being extended?
They're not going anywhere anytime in the immediate future. I'd just put it that way. Sylvie.
To follow up on Barbara's question.
Which one?
About the length.
She asked a lot of them.
About the length.
They weren't all mine.
Of the conflict. So I understand that the fact that the Russians refocus on Donbass may extend the conflict because they will have to move
Sure.
and to
Sure.
to go into a very contested region. So how long do you think it could last? Months, years?
Hard to say. It really is. The Ukrainians are fighting very, very well, and the Russians are not. It would be foolish to try to predict exactly how long this could go. Clearly, if in fact they're going to prioritize the Donbass region, if what they say they're going to do, they actually do, an area that they have now fought over for 8 years, an area where there are many Ukrainian armed forces who are also very active, this could drag on for a while. It might not just be a matter of days and weeks. It could be much longer than that. But Sylvie, that's difficult to know. It's really difficult to know. Louis.
John, you said that the Secretary is keeping his options open about the presence.
Yeah.
But has he actually extended the carrier and the combat brigade and the 82nd, because you said that they're not going at home anymore? Has he?
He reviews the posture literally every day, and he has decided that he's going to keep the 82nd there for a while longer, and he has decided that the Harry S. Truman and her strike group will stay in the Med for a while longer.
But the armored combat brigade, they're going.
Right now, those are the two big muscle movements, and the enablers that went with the 82nd also they're also staying, as you might imagine. I don't have additional decisions to speak to today, but again, first of all, they have. None of them have been there that long already. It really hasn't been. It's been 6-8 weeks in some cases, so it hasn't been that long. But again, he's going to keep his options open, make decisions in consultations with the chairman and General Walters to make sure that the deterrence and defense posture that we're trying to make sure is in place on the eastern flank of NATO is preserved, and that it's transparent. And that our allies and partners also have a say in what that posture looks like, and that they're comfortable with the capabilities we have in their country or in their region. So again, we'll do the best we can to be as transparent with you as well about that. But some of these units are fairly small, and they may come and go based on whatever the need is. Now, the more interesting question is, what does this look long term? And so at the right time, we'll sit down and we'll have those kinds of consultations with allies and partners too about what's the proper European posture here. Because clearly, no matter how this war ends, no matter when it ends, the security environment in Europe is going to be different. And we're going to have to respond to that. So what that looks like, we don't know, but we're going to stay open to having those kinds of conversations too about whether there needs to be more permanent, a larger permanent presence on the European continent. Tony.
I had one tactical and then one weapons question. Does the Pentagon assess that at this point, Russia's lack of air superiority, much less supremacy, has been the deciding factor in this conflict, and that Ukrainian forces can attack Russian ground formations with minimal fear of being attacked by Russian aircraft?
I don't think at this point we're willing to say there's one factor that's been ultimately decisive. I think probably the most important decisive factor in Russia's failure thus far to achieve what they themselves said were their goals in terms of replacing the Zelensky government, occupying Ukraine, removing their sovereignty. Their failure to achieve that, the biggest decisive factor, are the Ukrainians themselves. And not just the Ukrainian armed forces, but the Ukrainian people. I would say that they get the lion's share of the credit here about defeating the Russian strategic goals in the onset.
I'm just giving them all the credit in the world, but the fact that they've contained this powerful Russian Air Force, it would seem to be a major factor in their success on the ground.
I'm not suggesting it's not a major factor, but you asked me if it was the decisive factor, and I think there's a lot that goes into that.
Okay, weapons. You rattled off Stingers, Javelins. You didn't mention those 100 little drones that fixated the world's attention. When they do arrive there, what will be their targets? Because the versions going over there
That will be
don't
up
have
to the
anti-target.
Ukrainians to decide.
Well, they don't have the anti-tank capability of those drones. I just want to get a sense from you. What's the
I'm not going
rationale
to get
for 'em?
into targeting. We're providing the Ukrainians systems and weapons that they can use to defend themselves, and how they decide to use them, where and when, and against what targets, that's really for them to speak to. And clearly it wouldn't be wise, even if I knew, for me to talk about it here from this podium.
Okay, they haven't arrived yet, right? These switch
They have
ones? Okay. Can I ask you one of the civilian, minimize the civilian casualties? Part of minimizing it is fessing up and making good when you screw up, like we did in Afghanistan, killing that family in the Aaron drone attack. Can you take this for the record? Have they been paid? Have the survivors been given any condolence payments yet? I know that was in the works, but 4 months later.
I haven't checked in a while. I will. I'll take the question. I don't believe that that's happened yet.
I don't expect you to know off the top of your head, so thanks.
Thank you. In the back there.
I have two questions, one for each side of the conflict. Now, is the aim of the U.S. and the Allied weapons transfers to help Ukraine win this war? And would a win entail pushing the Russians out of the Donbass region? Now, for the other side, is Belarus still providing help to the Russians, or has Lukashenko pulled back his support for Putin?
You mean help as in providing a place from which the attack could have been launched? Right. Help as in providing refit and resupply, should that be what the Russians do? Help as in the ability to have aircraft launch and take off from your territory? Help as in letting the Russians put surface air missile systems? Yeah. I think all of that's true. And as for your first question, of course, look, this war should have never happened in the first place. But now that it is, obviously we want the Ukrainians to win. Why would we not be sending $2 billion worth of security assistance? And that's just the United States. If we didn't want them to win this war, if we didn't want them to get their country back, to have every inch of their territory respected by their neighbors, including Russia, yeah, absolutely. Rio.
Thank you. On China, China and the Solomon Island concluded the new security. Solomon Island concluded the new security agreement earlier today. This agreement will reportedly allow the Chinese warships to visit the Solomon Island. So how much are you concerned about this new security deal? And do you regard it as a Chinese effort to undermine the free and open Indo-Pacific?
I'll let the government of the Solomons speak to their relationship with China. That's really the appropriate place for comment about that. And I don't think, based on what little bit we know of this communication, it's too soon to know what China's long-term potential ambitions are here with respect to that. So I would let those two nations speak to this, Rio. But taking 10 steps back away from the Solomons, we have continued to see China's outreach to be coercive, to be aggressive, to be clearly one-sided towards China's interests in the Indo-Pacific region. They not only bully their neighbors for ridiculous, bogus territorial claims, but they actually are building basically island aircraft carriers in the Western Pacific to further advance their own national security goals, which are inimical to so many other nations there in the Asia Pacific.
So,
you have another one.
Yeah. Did the DoD reach out to the Solomon Island? Did the DoD reach out to the Solomon Island counterpart about this new security deal?
I know of no communication between us and the Solomon Islands. You might want to check with the State Department, though. That's really a better question for them. Kasim.
John, on Chernobyl, can you say that Chernobyl is still under the control of Russians? they have sent some forces out?
All I can tell you is that we've seen indications that some Russian forces are leaving Chernobyl. Who has custody of it right now? I don't think we're able to say definitively.
And also on a nuclear posture of Russians, do you have any indication that they changed nuclear posture, or have they conveyed to you anything with respect to that?
They're not conveying anything to us about their nuclear posture, Kasim. I would just say that we haven't seen anything from a nuclear posture perspective that warrants any change on our part. I just leave it at that. The back.
I have two questions. And my first question is about President Biden's announcements to release more oil reserve to reduce pressure on gas price. And I would like to know the strategic implication of this decision. So does the U.S. military have a separate oil reserve to make sure that this decision doesn't have any negative impact on U.S. military readiness in case of large unexpected contingencies?
We have, as I think everybody knows, I mean, we have fuel reserves of our own to fuel our operations. We do the best we can to distribute those and to make sure that they are available for our use. And obviously, but we also purchase on the market oil and gas so that we don't have to dip into our reserves all the time. What I would just tell you, because I'm not an expert on exactly what that process looks like, I would just tell you that the more important thing is, can we continue to defend the country, defend our national interests, using our reserves, our resources for fossil fuel? And the answer is yes.
And my second question is about nuclear posture review. So the U.S. allies have paid much attention to this year's nuclear posture review. And yesterday we have like half-page fact sheet. The summary consisted of 7 sentences about nuclear posture review and 3 sentences about missile defense review. And I checked how previous administrations released their result of their review. So the Obama administration had printed like 72 pages of book and in 2010, and Trump administration had released like a 100-page of their like a report in 2018. So is there any reason that the current administration should keep most of information classified this year? And do you have any plan to release more detailed and comprehensive information?
We will release an unclassified version of both documents at the appropriate time. Right now they're classified. We'll work through the declassification process, but they'll get released eventually. Yes.
So do you have any estimation about the release, like when?
In coming months. In coming months. Anything else? Okay. Thanks, everybody.